Hello, and welcome to the Windows Phone 8 Jumpstart. My name's Andy Wigley, and this is Rob Tiffany.
I'm Rob Tiffany, an old friend of Andy's. All right, let's get started here.
Okay,
Who is this guy?
Okay, so I'm Andy Wigley. I have just joined Microsoft. I was 10 years a Microsoft MVP. I was told yesterday you have to get to 11 for it to mean anything, but hey.
Oh.
So I
Do you get a special trophy or anything?
No.
Okay.
So I've just joined Microsoft UK. I'm working as a technical evangelist in DPE, Developer and Platform Evangelism, doing developer outreach events such as this, and working with the field and working with our customers to help create great solutions for Windows Phone and other technologies.
And I know they appreciate that. Absolutely.
So I live in Snowdonia in North Wales, so Bore da to anybody listening from Wales at the moment. And
shout out to Wales.
Yeah, I've written a number of books in the past. I was very pleased to see when I joined DPE, they have a bookshelf in there, which is the bookshelf of obsolete technologies, and
Excellent.
my .NET Compact Framework core reference, which was written in 2003. Is on there, but actually that's kind of harsh because it covers. We are to version 3.9 on that now. So
Yeah.
yeah.
The Compact Framework has lived on longer than people realize.
Yeah. Now, for those of you who have watched the jump starts in the past, you will realise that this is not Rob Miles, who has been my partner in crime for these, but he is Rob. We have managed to find another Rob. Now, Rob Miles intended to be here. It was our intention to have him here. He's had a few health problems. He's fixing great, but unfortunately it meant he couldn't be here. So he sends his apologies. But his spirit lives on in this.
Yes.
For those of you who love bad jokes and cheese, we are going to ensure that remains in this. And
That's why they got me. My name is also Rob, and I've got a lot of bad jokes.
Okay.
I don't know if they'll be as good as Rob Miles. I hope, Rob, you're watching. So it's my turn here. All right. So I do a lot of mobile enterprise mobility strategy work here at Microsoft. I work in our enterprise and partner group. Known Andy for a long time. I think we met when we were MVPs together. I wasn't an MVP for 10 years, unfortunately. I think just like 3, something like that. So there's probably no award for that. But yeah, it's got my start writing books like Andy. And it would probably be on the bookshelf of obsolete books, like books on the Pocket PC and Pocket Access. Do you remember Pocket Access?
Wow. Yes.
Yeah, I really talked about that stuff.
But you write real books with like real stories as well.
I have an alternate ego.
Right.
That yes, I do write children's stories as well as computer books. So, but that's for another time. But yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Great.
Let's get after it.
All right. So let's look at the agenda. What you're going to get for the next 2 days. We've got a packed agenda, so there is a load of new stuff in Windows Phone 8. So let's make one thing clear, that this 2 days is not just aimed at people who are already Windows Phone 7 developers, but of course we're obviously going to call out all of the differences and the new things as we go through it. But we're also we hope to have people watching this who are new to Windows Phone. So we've got a lot of sessions there, as you can see. We've got an introduction first, where we're introducing Windows Phone 8 application development. We've split that into 2 parts. So we're going to take a look at the different ways you can build apps for Windows Phone 8, and it's quite a lot expanded from what we had in Windows Phone 7. We're going to do a quick run through of all the new features at a very high level, so kind of what's coming up over the next 2 days. And we're going to have a quick introduction to the development tools and tell you how to get started. So that's 1A and 1B. And then the next 2 sessions, designing Windows Phone apps and building Windows Phone apps. This is really quite a quick run through the whole process of building a Windows Phone app, from conception through to building all the essential bits into it, creating some pages, navigation, the data storage, and a lot of good things. So concentrating primarily on the design, look and feel, about creating a great looking and great operating Windows Phone app. So that's what 2 and 3 is about. And then after that, we kind of dig deeper into all of the different technologies. So we're going to look at files and storage. Then we're going to take a 60-minute break. For us, we're over in Redmond, of course, in Washington. So that'll be that's kind of a midday Pacific time when we're going to take a break for an hour. And then the second half of the day here, we're going to run through the Windows Phone 8 application lifecycle, talk about background processing, the new tile story and lock screen notifications, push notifications, and then a session using phone resources, which is all about interacting with the different things that the platform gives you. So interacting with contacts and with maps and with all those kind of, and the sensors, these kind of features, and the camera.
Excellent.
And then tomorrow, we've got another packed day as well.
But there's more.
There is much more.
Yes.
Much more. So first is the erroneously named app-to-app communication session.
Yeah.
We keep that in a feeble attempt to grab your attention because it's kind of, oh, really, app-to-app? Yeah, but it's much more than that. It's more, it's actually some cute ways of launching your app, and that can be from another app, but that's only part of the story. Looking at networking, so masses of ways of these phone devices are incredible communications devices. So there's plenty of ways that you can link your apps to data sources in the cloud, to calling out to resources out on the internet. So we're going to look at a lot of different aspects of that, including a lot of best practice about compression and good ways of doing that, and have a look at Azure mobile services and that kind of stuff.
Azure's hot.
It certainly is hot.
Yes.
So proximity sensors and Bluetooth. This is all about NFC and Bluetooth. So we've got great new APIs for doing that. Speech input is really good fun. We've really got a very good, rich API for putting speech interaction into your apps. Maps and location. We've got a new maps control. There's the wallet. We'll run through that. In-app purchasing. Then another break for us, and then the second half of that day we talk about the whole Windows Phone store, how you actually submit your apps, what the submission process is. Enterprise applications, we've got a big story for creating applications and for enterprises to publish their own apps. So Rob is going to give the benefit of his experience as a mobility architect on that session. How you can create apps that will, from one code base that will run on Windows 8 and Windows Phone 8. And then Rob's going to wrap up. We're going to take a good look at creating web apps for Windows Phone 8.
Yeah, the web's still around, as I hear. So we'll touch on that. Excellent.
Okay, so
shall we dive in?
We should dive in.
Excellent.
So, okay, so we're going to start with...
We're going to
start with, let's get my notes up here.
We're going to introduce that Windows Phone 8 app development. This is great stuff. You're not going to be using embedded VB anymore like you might have thought, or even embedded C++.
All right.
Visual Studio 2012 is your friend.
So introducing Windows Phone 8 app development.
Excellent.
Yeah. So this module, we're going to look at the new application platform in Windows Phone 8. We're going to take a look under the covers, what's the architecture, what has really changed with Windows Phone 8. And then we're going to have a look at the different application development models. There are different ways that you can build apps. Now we're going to touch on each of the different ways of building apps, but I have to stress, probably haven't stressed this already, you should have picked this up from the publicity for this event, but this is really all about building XAML apps with C#. So we'll have a quick look at the C++ and the DirectX and the other models for building apps, but the rest of the content is going to be concentrating on XAML and C#. We're going to look at the Windows Phone 8 version of the Windows runtime. We have a Windows Phone runtime, so what's that all about? Then how do you get started? We'll take a quick break, and then we're going to do this high-level run-through of all the new features that are in the product. We're going to look at the Windows Phone 7. How do Windows Phone 7 apps run on Windows Phone 8? What do you have to do to get that to happen?
I'm just glad that they do.
Not very much. They do,
yeah,
yes. It's great. A good story there.
Yeah.
But we explain how that works and what you need to be aware of. And then finally an introduction to getting started and getting going, creating your first little Hello World apps and creating some of the tools. So that's going to take us through the first 1A and 1B. That's what we're looking at here. So the first thing to say...
Wow.
Is what we've got is killer hardware. So we have got some great looking new phones that come from our hardware partners. Great phones there from Nokia, HTC, Samsung, and a number of other manufacturers as well are coming forward with some great looking devices. So this is taking a new look at the hardware, the new smartphone platform. So now we've got good support for multi-core chipsets. So I think all of the phones that have been announced so far are dual-core devices. whole new graphics processor, increased RAM. So on Windows Phone 7.x, we had the maximum spec for devices was 512 megs of RAM, and there were lower spec devices at 256. That now has doubled, so most of the devices that have been released so far, 1 gig of RAM, and then some lower spec devices will be coming along with 512. More screen resolutions. We've got 3 screen resolutions. So we're going to cover that in session 3 this morning about how you handle programming, how do you do your UI for handling 3 different screen resolutions. Removable SD cards. You can actually support SD cards and NFC, of course. Right. Now, when the Windows Phone 8 platform was kind of announced to the world, back in, was it June in San Francisco? June,
That's right.
July.
Yeah, we had a big summit there.
That's right.
Yeah.
One of the key features that was called out was this shared Windows core. But there has been a little bit of confusion over what that actually means. So, I mean, it's great news for the platform, but there's been a bit of misconceptions about what it means for the developer story. So let's clear that up. So the key thing is, first of all, is to realize that what we had with Windows Phone 7.x was the core operating system on that was Windows CE, Windows Comp.
Who remembers Windows CE?
It's still alive.
It's still alive.
It's still alive.
It's our favorite real-time embedded operating system.
That's right. And Windows CE has been around for a long time. It's a great operating system for small battery-powered handheld devices. It's still a great operating system. There's nothing wrong with it. But it was its own branch of the Windows family, and it's like I said, it's been the core operating system through all the Pocket PCs and Windows Mobile and up to Windows Phone 7.x. But there are a lot of advantages in actually combining the different Windows platforms.
Absolutely.
So actually what we've got now is the Windows Phone 8 platform has converged at a low level in the operating system level with big Windows, with Windows 8. So at its heart, we've got the Windows NT kernel is the same now in both. And a lot of the operating system modules are actually shared between Windows 8 and Windows Phone 8. So this has a number of advantages. Clearly, for the future of the platform, this is great foundations for future expansion and combining the developer story.
You get so many things for free just using Windows 8.
So shared core means that you've got the kernel, networking, graphics support, file system, multimedia, the same on both platforms now. So a lot of shared components in there. So all the benefits of the long history of these components in the big Windows operating system comes to Windows Phone as well. For hardware manufacturers, this is pretty appealing because now we've got exactly the same driver model for working with the hardware for both platforms. So they have some efficiencies there that they can take advantage of. And Windows Phone gets all the support. So multi-core has been, a stalwart of big Windows support for a number of years. So we've got that long, perfection of that model and the way it works comes to Windows Phone as well.
And when you talk about multi-core, just the fact that we get real Windows, big Windows on the phone, you might imagine, it could be a huge engineering effort to figure out how to expand to more and more cores on a phone operating system when that's all you're targeting. Just imagine now that we have Windows 8, running on our platform, how much easier this gets. It means our time to market's faster. It's going to be so. I know it sounds crazy having maybe a 64-core phone, but it's not the crazy engineering effort that you might imagine it would be. Since we just get this for free, we get that same shared kernel. So it's good stuff for us. It's good stuff for our customers, no doubt about it.
Sure. It's important to say, though, what it doesn't mean as well.
Sure.
So we're getting good convergence on the hardware level and the operating system level. From the developer APIs, sure, we're getting a lot of convergence, and that's going to improve. But we're kind of not there yet, if you like. So with Windows Phone 8, we have got complete support for the way we've been building stuff on Windows Phone 7.x. All of that so you can carry on, still just creating apps just the same way you always have done. So
that's good for me because I haven't learned any of that new stuff yet, which is why you have me here today.
Indeed.
Yeah,
great.
Excellent.
Thanks. You make me feel comfortable.
I'm here to make you feel better. Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll be calling out all the features that I have. Typically, a lot of the new stuff that's come out, NFC, some of the sensors, and we've got networking APIs. New stuff that has been added into Windows Phone 8 has been borrowed, if you like, or is common with what we've got on Windows 8. So you'll see a lot of commonality. Other stuff, there is some changes. So we have got a session tomorrow where we're going to dig down into what the differences really are. But like I say, we'll be calling it out as we go along.
Absolutely.
All right. Now then, let's dig down into what we've got from a dev point of view. So we are working with 3 whole sets of APIs that the developers can work with. So we've got essentially managed application development at a high level, managed application development using Windows Phone 7.1, Windows Phone 8, using .NET and Windows Phone Runtime APIs. So you can carry, we've got absolute complete support for the Windows Phone 7.1 APIs. So you could carry on, creating apps just the same way we've always done. That is supported. We've also got, by the same score, so Windows Phone 7.1 apps run unchanged on Windows Phone 8. So you can still carry on creating games developed using the XNA framework. So this is a managed framework. We'll have a look at this in a minute. So you can carry on doing that just the same. But you are going to, if you go for that model, obviously you can't use any of the new Windows Phone 8.
Right, right. But it definitely shows our commitment
Yeah.
to our existing developer base.
Yeah.
And all those, I think we're over 120,000 apps in our store today. And
Yeah.
so all those are going to work.
Now, if you create a new Windows Phone 8 XAML-based app, or indeed if you take a Windows Phone 7.1 XAML-based app and then upgrade it in Visual Studio, which is just a right-click upgrade to 8, then you can expand the APIs that you can address, include some of the new stuff that's been added onto the .NET API set, and also the Windows Phone Runtime APIs.
Right.
So again, we'll dig down to those in a short while. There's also a C++ story with Direct3D graphics. So if you can do a pure Direct3D app. We'll look at that in a moment, which is just C++. But you can also combine. You can have a kind of hybrid app where you can have most of your UIs created with XAML, but you can also incorporate some Direct3D graphics into that. So there's a kind of hybrid model for that.
Very cool.
You can obviously do a pure native C++ DirectX Direct3D application, and that is targeted for the games development community.
Right. Good stuff.
Now, there's also a strong this native development runs right through all of these development models. So if you've got a Windows Phone 8 XAML-based app, either the pure XAML or the hybrid XAML and Direct3D, you can also call out to native libraries and incorporate native code into all of these application models. So, looking a little bit deeper into what those 3 different API sets look like. The .NET API is the primary API for managed developers, and as I said, includes everything that you've been used to using in Windows Phone OS 7.1. It contains all the classes and types from those namespaces, and there's been a whole bunch of new stuff has been added into here as well, which is the wallet, share media tasks. You can see the list there. Now, the Windows Phone Runtime, this is where we're getting a lot of commonality with Windows 8. This is a subset of the full WinRT, the Windows Runtime that we've got on Windows 8, plus some phone-specific additions. So, you don't need to know this, but it's actually implemented in C++, and then what they say is it's projected out. So you get a kind of an addressable API layer on top of that. So any of the methods and types that are in the Windows Runtime can be accessed by C# and VB.NET developers through managed code, and also from native developers, C++. So they're projected out to these different programming models.
So it won't look strange to a managed developer. It'll seem familiar to them.
Indeed. Yeah,
just like they're doing .NET development.
Sure, sure. Now, this is an important thing. HTML5 JavaScript projection, which some of you may be familiar with Windows 8, is not supported on Windows Phone 8. We do have an HTML5 application story. We'll come on to that in a moment. But the Win.js model, the JavaScript and HTML5 model that you're seeing on Windows 8 is not supported on Windows Phone. So what we've got with the Windows Phone Runtime is a subset of the full WinRT. So around about 2,500 or so members of the full WinRT API set. So it's not insignificant. It's quite and a lot of stuff that is excluded is stuff that don't make sense on a phone, basically. So.
Right.
And we've also got some new stuff as well, like the speech API. It's kind of, maybe this is like the phone is going to lead the way, and
It is.
maybe this is going to come to Windows 8. That's not an
Speech
announcement.
is
That's not an announcement, folks. But yeah, it would make
Eddie
sense,
Wigley
but-
just made an announcement today for a new product.
Yeah.
The speech is a game changer, I think, Andy.
It is.
And I know we'll dive into that more later.
It's a fun session to look at the speech. It's fun. It's easy to integrate into your app.
Definitely. Definitely.
You can do very complex speech-based apps as well.
Can you
but-
imagine just
yeah.
building apps where it's just a conversational application? You're just talking to it, not even looking.
You can do that.
Yeah, amazing stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll dig into that tomorrow. So yeah, loads of stuff in there. This does mean there's an interesting side effect of this for the managed code developer. So what this actually means is that in certain areas, if you're doing a Windows Phone 8 application, you've actually got a choice of 2 API sets that do pretty much exactly the same thing,
Right.
but they're slightly different. So you've got the old, if you like, the old school Windows Phone 7.1 API set in the .NET API. Classic example of that is the isolated storage APIs for
Right.
storing files down into persistent storage on the phone. Or you can actually, today, you could write new code and use the Windows.storage APIs, which is writing code that is common, that is consistent with what you would do on Windows 8. And there's some other sockets, thread pool sensors. So there's a bunch of these guys. Now, so which should you use? Well, it kind of depends where you're coming from, really. If you are taking an existing Windows Phone 7 app and you're upgrading it to 8 and you're adding some Windows Phone 8 new features to it, then it makes sense to just stay with the APIs that you've already used for those bits that you've got working code. Don't reinvent the wheel. It's working. It's great. If, however, you're doing a new development today and you're going to be looking at creating a Windows 8 version from the same code base, then clearly you're going to want to go with the Windows RT. It's fair to say that going forwards, any new enhancements that are going to be added to the platform in future releases are going to tend to end up in the Windows Runtime API set. So you probably want to be making a steady move over to those programming models if you're coming from a Windows Phone 7.1 background.
Definitely, I agree.
All right. So next, finally, we got the native API. So we've got a subset of Win32 and COM APIs. We've got WinSock in there, and there's like native camera APIs, and there's a whole bunch of COM stuff. So this is in there with a couple of goals, really. It's mainly of interest to native code developers, and it's in there for porting existing native libraries you might have, or it's there to help like the native gaming community or people who are coming from other platforms where you've got C or C++ code. This is a route to you to be able to port those more easily onto the Windows Phone platform. So managed applications, I've said this, there is a hybrid model all the way through this. You can create native libraries and call them from your managed code. So there are going to be some cases where you're going to want to do that. All right, so that's the API sets.
Excellent.
Let's take a look now at a pretty high level, at just some of the different apps that we can now create.
Good idea.
So this is the main topic of this course, XAML UI with managed code. So if you're a Windows Phone 7, your app developer, you may be wondering what's happened to Silverlight. Where's this Silverlight term gone? It's kind of just been deprecated, if you like. Silverlight is a thing that grew out of a browser plugin for rich internet applications. So it started life as a completely browser resident on the desktop.
WPFE.
WPFE was its
Right.
code name. Yeah, that's right. So it was there, and it was also cross-platform. So the idea was many years ago that this would be a great way of creating rich internet applications resident in the browser. And then it came out of the browser,
Right.
so you could actually install those Silverlight applications onto your desktop. And then Windows Phone 7 came along, and they kind of took that out-of-browser model and made it the primary app development model for Windows Phone 7 apps. And there was no actually in-browser model at all on Windows Phone 7.
Right, absolutely.
But it's kind of gone away from, and the whole thing of browser plugins is kind of losing credence really in the industry. So
No, you're right. It has been trailing off.
yeah. So we've sort of taken a step back from the Silverlight term, and now we just talk about XAML-based applications. But the key thing here is that it's kind of the same that you always used to know. So XAML in Windows Phone 8 is the same XAML that you're used to working with if you're coming from Phone 7.1. So your logic is written using C# Visual Basic.NET, and you're accessing the .NET APIs and the Windows Phone runtime. Right, so if we're going to switch over to the demo machine. This is Visual Studio 2012. We'll talk about the different flavors of that coming up. But we've got, so I'm going to create myself a new project here. And this is the ultimate. Here's the Windows Phone category. So we see we've got a whole bunch of new project templates that we can choose from. Windows Phone app, data-bound app, class library, panorama, pivot, and different flavors of these. So I'm just going to create me a, let's create me a panorama app. And you get a drop down, which phone version do you want to support? So in Visual Studio 2012, you can create apps for Windows Phone OS 7.1. You can carry on doing apps for that platform. And of course, there's going to be a lot of phones out in the market that are still running 7.1 for a long time to come. So that still makes a lot of sense. For the new phones only, then you select Windows Phone OS 8.0. And you create a starter project from the project template, and this is a fully functioning application that has everything you need to get started with this particular style of application. So those templates are different styles of starter app. So let's just hide this. This is XAML, this XML that you see here, Solution Explorer if you're not used to Visual Studio. And there's our design surface. Let me just shrink that down a bit so you can see a bit better. And this is this panorama, if you're not used to this, is one of the classical UI models that we have for Windows Phone. So Windows Phone is quite innovative compared to other smartphone platforms, the way it makes use of the sort of limited screen space. And I'm going to run this on the phone emulator, this panorama app, and you'll see what I mean by the innovative approach to handling. So I hope you saw there, depending on how fast your internet link, I hope you saw the nice and buttery smooth animation.
Very buttery, yes.
So this is, you'll see that a panorama app is structured into sort of islands of information. So I can swipe across to the right, and we see, and you can see actually just bleeding onto the canvas at the side there, you can see a hint that there is more to see as well. And it actually is circular, so there's actually 3 islands of information, and as you can see, in a panorama, they don't have to be bounded by the frame of the page. This third item is actually wider than the physical screen. But you think of the screen then becomes like a window frame looking onto a bigger canvas behind, and it becomes very natural for the user to swipe from side to side with their finger to see more of the content. So when you get to item 3, then we're back to first item and second item. So this is one of the nice models, and you get a 3D effect. The background actually moves at a different speed as you're navigating across compared to the foreground data. So
is that nice. Is that a parallax?
Parallax, that's what it is.
Yeah. It's definitely something you don't see on any other mobile platform.
No. So the anatomy of this, like I said, there's your design surface. This is XAML. This is on XML application markup language, which is how you define your UI. And over the right, we've got the Solution Explorer for exploring the different files that make up this solution. All right, let's switch back to the slides. And right, so the next model, XNA games using managed code. So there was a lot of debate, was XNA dead? XNA is not dead, XNA is still with us. But it's fair to say that it's not been enhanced either. So what we've got is full support for XNA game development. Exactly the same API set that you may have been used to using for 7.1. So this is still a great platform for writing simple games for Windows Phone. And indeed for Xbox and Windows 7. So same new project templates as Visual Studio 2010, so you can't use any of the new Windows Phone 8 side of things. And we have project templates for that. If you go back to the demo slide again, demo machine. New project for this, so you'll find the XNA templates actually not in the Windows Phone category, but you need to go down to XNA Game Studio 4, and here you can see we've got a Windows Phone game library. Actually, yeah, I believe there is so there's a Windows Phone XML and XNA hybrid app project template in the Windows Phone category as well. But let's just create ourselves a straight Windows Phone game. Okay, that. This one is still in C# and VB, but it's like for simple games. It's just code. There actually isn't any XAML on this. There's nothing you can look at in the graphical designer. It's all code driven. The way XNA games work is that you essentially have 4 methods that are key. So I have initialize, where you initialize your game.
Yes.
Load content, where you load all the resources into memory, get the game ready to run. And then essentially it calls update and draw 30 frames per second, 30 times per second. It calls update, so you just move your objects around the game world. You have your logic in there to calculate for collisions or bounces and this kind of stuff. And you'll update the state of all your game pieces. And then draw simply draws it all to the screen. So a default game is not terribly exciting.
But I think anyone who wants to get into game development, there's no better place to start than with XNA.
Yeah. Now Rob Miles, if he was here, bless him, this is his expertise.
Yes.
Yeah, he uses XNA to teach. He's a lecturer at Hull University. He uses this as a great way of teaching programming because it's such a nice, well-factored object model. This is a game. Yeah.
That's a beautiful game.
Isn't it? Yeah. And actual fact, the only thing this game does is you can press the back button and
Is that the Cornflower Blue game?
Blue, which is the traditional XNA
Excellent.
model. All right, that was XNA. Back to the slides. And the next one, Direct3D. So this is the whole new one. Direct3D app is written entirely in native code. And it only uses Direct3D for its UI. This is a game this is the new gaming model for Windows Phone. But the key thing here is, of all these application development models we're showing you here, this is the one that is you've got most commonality with Windows 8. So if you create a Windows 8 game, it will be using these same technologies and a very high degree of the logic and the objects that you create for that Windows 8 game, you'll be able to use in your Windows Phone 8 version. So the game engine, everything will just come across. You may have to resize, obviously, some graphical assets and that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
But that's, Direct3D, so that's the next one. Now, you can also, like I said, you can actually combine this with a XAML app as well. So you can actually have a rich XAML app with some Direct3D graphics in it. And I can show you an example of that on the demo machine. New project. Let's go back to Windows Phone category. And we'll use this hybrid one. This is, not that one, this one. Windows Phone X, XAML and Direct3D. So let's run it first, show you what it does. And all these are, creating new projects that you can then use as the starting point for creating your real app. So fully functional projects that you get out of new project templates. And it's still creating that project, taking a little while. Because whenever you've got C++ code in there, Visual Studio seems to have to do a bit more work to get the thing going.
But you definitely have the requisite 3D cube.
We have the 3D cube.
You have to have that.
Is that a requisite?
It is. Okay. It is. Just to let people know that's what we're doing. You know.
See at the bottom we got parsing included files. It has a bit more work to do with C++.
Right. Nothing says Direct3D like the rotating cube.
Right. Okay. All right. It's finally loaded. Let's run it. Here's the emulator come up again, and there we go.
Oh, there it is.
Ooh.
Wow.
Isn't that lovely?
It's gorgeous.
If we could we bask in this for a moment? This is
just
great.
Admire that.
All right.
Okay, bored of that.
Okay, and carry on now.
Yeah. So just to look at if you look at the Solution Explorer on the right here, sure, we've got a XAML page here. That's what we're looking at here. But actual fact, this has got if we're looking actually into the XAML, it's got an element in here called a drawing surface. So this is a XAML element, which is a drawing surface into which you can draw 3D graphics. And the 3D graphics is all in this Phone XAML Direct3D App 2 project over here. There's a cube renderer, and I'm certainly not going to dig into all of that code now, but you can see how you got this nice hybrid model. You can actually have some rich 3D graphics into your XAML app.
You don't want to scare people by showing them C++ code?
No.
Okay.
Out
All
of
right.
scope.
Okay.
All right, back to the slides. Now, this is a key thing and key deliverable for Windows Phone 8, is that managed apps can also interact with native libraries. So leaving
Right.
aside the direct 3D graphics, we can actually have native libraries in there. So you can add a C++ a Windows Phone runtime component project to a managed XAML solution. So in that native code library, you could have some WinSock stuff, but the only purpose WinSock is a sockets API for networking. So I wouldn't recommend that. Doesn't give you anything you can't do more easily in managed code. But if you've got some legacy code that uses WinSock, it means you can actually port that library across and use it fairly easily within your native applications. So what would you do this for? So there's a number of scenarios where this becomes useful. So yeah, when you want to use this is for all Windows Phone 8 apps can use native code, but not all apps need to. So, so for many app scenarios, a managed app provides the same features and performance as an app that uses native code. And actually, there's some enhancements compiled in the cloud, which I'll talk about in a while, which make managed apps work even faster than they used to do on Windows Phone 7.1, quite substantially in some cases. But the following are 3 reasons why you may want to use native code in your app. First of all, is portability. So if you're targeting multiple platforms, platforms from other vendors, it may make sense to implement your core functionality in a native library that you can be used on all of the platforms you're targeting. This is something particularly, obviously, the gaming industry is keen on. Direct 3D graphics, that one we just looked at. If your app needs to use some Direct 3D to render some complex graphics to the screen, then you're going to, again, use this native code library to do that. But the one that's probably going to be of most use to people is performance. So for some scenarios, and for some scenarios, not all, you can achieve a performance benefit in large computation tasks by using native code. And I've got an example of this which illustrates actually 2 things. Both of all, how it works, but also why it's not always necessarily a good thing.
Excellent.
It's a kind of anti-demo, this one.
Oh, that's what we're all hoping for, is an anti-demo to go with our anti-presentation.
Yeah. So
Excellent.
On the demo machine, please, and I have to go and find, I've got a sample for this one. So.
I hope it's some kind of quantitative analysis.
No.
Okay.
It's not.
All right.
And I have to thank Peter Tor on the phone team for this demo. So.
Thanks, Peter.
Here. I'm going to run this up on the emulator. It needs to build it, clearly, to make it work. You don't say.
Yeah.
And here is the emulator. Now, here we've got a nice picture of, I don't know what.
Is that the Bellagio?
Tell me, you tell me. Is that in
Las Vegas?
Las Vegas, okay, there you go.
Not to be confused with Bellagio on Lake Como.
Okay, so this has got, this is a big image. If you look on the right, large.jpg is the, can we look at the properties of that? Oh, it doesn't tell you. Anyway, so it's at a very big, it's just off the bottom of the screen, unfortunately, on this resolution. But it's a very large, trust me, it's a very large image. Now, what happens when you press this Go button is that some processing happens. And we've now got the same images on the top, but if I scroll up, down here we've got 2 black and white versions of the same thing. Why have we got 2, Rob?
I have no idea.
I shall tell you.
Excellent.
So there's 2 versions there. Actually, what this is we've taken the original image and we have converted it to black and white, to grayscale. And it's been done twice, once with pure managed code and once with native code. Just to show that there's 2 ways of doing this sort of thing. So you might have thought that doing that sort of thing is the computationally intensive sort of thing that should be done in native code. In actual fact, this sample it was used to sort of instrument this. In actual fact, in this particular case, it's faster to do it in managed code. So that just
get out of town.
Yeah, it illustrates the fact that
just happens,
you're not always going to necessarily get the gains that you're going to want. But for a lot of scenarios, it is going to be a useful solution for getting native code, incorporating it in. Let me show you the code just so you get a flavor for what's going on.
You need to prove to them that it's managed code that's going faster.
This is what I'm going to do.
Excellent.
So let's see. Now that's Create Grayscale Native is the one that calls out to our native library. So we've got, this is our native, this is native code, C++. Hold on to your hats. Yeah, it's all right. It doesn't hurt. Yeah.
How?
It's beautiful.
It is.
I actually am a C++ developer from a long time ago, but it is a long time ago.
Yeah.
You're getting better.
Yeah, that's right. So I've been managed for quite a few years. I'm going to tend to stay that way.
We prefer to have you managed.
Yes, it's much better. So that's the native code for doing that. And then there's a create grayscale managed, which is this. We create a writable bitmap. You get an array of pixels from your writable bitmap where you load in the image into it. And they call this make grayscale, which basically does both of these do the same thing. They do a for each round every pixel in the image, and they do this computation. So there's a lot of pixels in this particular image. It's a huge image, so a lot of work. And this processing just shifts the alpha, the RGB, so we end up with a monochrome image.
Okay.
But yeah, the interesting thing, because when you shift, you have to shift all that data across the managed native library.
Right.
There is some overheads for that. So this is why this particular example actually is quicker to do in managed code.
That's good to know.
Yeah, but if you've got something that's a bit more intensive image processing, something a bit more significant than simply doing a grayscale, then you are going to see performance enhancement by shifting that off into native code.
Like maybe if you needed to do some kind of quantitative stuff where you're maybe taking weather analysis for the last 50 years and then you need to project forward curves to figure out how much heating oil is going to cost. You might want to do that in C++.
Took the words out of my mouth.
Yeah, or use a supercomputer while you're at it.
Or shift it to the cloud.
Or shift it to the cloud. Excellent.
Okay.
As a routine example of how you might use C++.
As a routine, the sort of thing you're always going to want to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Pretty standard, really.
Back to the slides.
Yes.
All right. So that was the hybrid model. We're going to see a lot of interesting stuff happening here. So. Oh, that was the demo.
That was the demo.
That was the demo.
So we'll just move right on past that.
Okay, HTML5. So I've already said, this is the key thing, that WinJS projection model that we have, the Windows 8 style HTML5 JavaScript app development, is not supported on Windows Phone 8. But what we do have is Internet Explorer 10. And this is one of those components. This is another thing that kind of where we get the benefits of the combining of the platforms.
Yes.
So the Internet Explorer 10 has a very high percentage of the code in the Windows Phone version is identical to the desktop browser. So we've got a really great new JavaScript processing engine, which is 4 times faster than we had on Windows Phone 7.
Chakra.
Yeah, is that what it's called? Yeah.
Yes.
So Rob here's the web guy on this team. So
yeah.
Great support for HTML5, so we've got twice the feature support compared to what we had on the previous version. So we've got a really capable browser on the phone, and we can make use of that in apps, sort of where you've got a native shell hosting a web browser control.
And even though we use the term hybrid app loosely about other things, many of you out in the mobile development world will know the true hybrid app actually is. You see a lot of them out there. Is basically absolutely when you take a native app and put a browser control, and then that browser can communicate with the platform and vice versa. That's when you want to leverage your HTML and JavaScript skills, but you still want to get it into the store, versus just reaching out to a URL to go to a website. And obviously, aside from getting it into a store where people can discover it that way, building these hybrid apps, like Andy will show you here, also allows you, if there's something in HTML5 that you cannot do, that only native code can do, but maybe you've got a lot of high skill set around HTML, this hybrid app will let you communicate with the platform natively. And so your JavaScript on the page could call a C# function, for instance, or a VB function that's in native code that will allow you to access to the platform, maybe like the accelerometer or something like that that HTML5 doesn't support. And then vice versa. The platform can call up into a JavaScript function and pass information back to the page. And so it's a great scenario if you have that HTML5 skill set.
Sure. Yeah. And if we go to the demo machine, we'll just show you what you get from the project templates. So we have even got a Windows Phone HTML5 app project template in here. This is not super exciting, it has to be said, but it's got some HTML content in it, which, when it finishes loading, there we go. It's got an index.html page. That's it, HTML. So there's nothing specific HTML5 about this sample, but it is a starting block. And nor does this show the interop between managed code and native, but that definitely is the way to, as Rob says, to call out to stuff that you can't do in HTML5. What does that look like? Well, spookily, it looks rather like a regular
Wow.
native, regular XAML app.
That's spooky.
It is spooky. But this is HTML. This is HTML being shown in a web browser control. So that model is there for you, and there's a lot of interest in developing for that, because clearly, if you're developing a lot of your content in HTML5, you've got a degree of portability with other platforms. So this
Absolutely.
is Okay. So that was that model. Okay. So back to the slides. So finally, in this part of this first session, what about existing Windows Phone 7.x apps? What's the story with this? How do those run on? What's the problems, if there are any, with running those on Windows Phone 8? So the good news is, in general, if you have any apps that you have written for 7.1, you can take that compiled output, that ZAP file. It will install straight onto Windows Phone 8. So how many do we have?
120, probably more than that.
130,000 apps at the present.
About 300 apps per day.
Yeah, it's growing at 300 per day, so it's growing fast. All of those existing apps run just great on Windows Phone 8. Well, nearly all. There were a few that were created with a reduced distribution hybrid API, which had native code on Windows Phone 7. Those have to, but we're talking about a very small number of apps.
Absolutely.
Those have to be rebuilt. On the whole, Windows Phone 7.1 apps will work great on Windows Phone 8. Now, there's a difference. There's something you have to be aware of if you just ship your ready compiled Windows Phone 7 app and run it on Windows Phone 8, or whether you can upgrade it to Windows 8. And let me explain what we're talking about here. So your Windows Phone 7.1 app will run without compilation and works great on Windows Phone 8. But clearly the underlying platform, the developer platform, the libraries that we are calling out to when we make API calls, are the Windows Phone 8 versions on the phone. They are pre-installed in burned into ROM. They are already on the phone. So there is something called the Quirks mode, which I've lost a graphic for. Where's it gone? There we go.
There it is. There's those Quirks.
There's Quirks, yeah. So there's a Quirks layer. So the thing is, the compact framework, .NET compact framework, which is what we were building against on Windows Phone 7.x, it had a few idiosyncrasies, shall we say, a few ways of doing things, but that differed in subtle ways from the way that the core CLR, which is the .NET runtime that we developed against for Silverlight, desktop Silverlight apps. Core CLR was the .NET runtime for that. Now, actually, with Windows Phone 8, we are using Core CLR. So Core CLR is now our .NET underlying runtime. But like I said, there are a few subtle differences, and I'll call those out in a moment, between .NET CF ways things worked and the Core CLR ways APIs worked.
Right.
So in Core CLR, the idea is that actually they considered the .NET CF way of doing things like non-optimal, shall we say?
Certainly.
So there are a few kind of breaking changes, if you like, between the two different runtimes. So what the Quirks layer is there for is to sort of retrofit the broken .NET CF behavior back onto the Core CLR API. So it allows this is why your Windows Phone 7.1 compiled app will work just the same as it did when it was running on a Windows Phone 7 device, and it will behave in the same way when it's running on a Windows Phone 8 device. However, if you then take that same app and you upgrade it, which is just a right-click in Visual Studio saying upgrade to 8, and then it will just run, and you're now a Windows Phone 8 app without having to make any code changes at all. Your same code, exactly, so you haven't changed your code, it will be running on a Windows Phone 8 device, but the Quirks layer is removed, so you're running against those underlying API implementations unchanged.
Right,
so
absolutely.
It's the new way of working it. Now, most of the time, this is not going to cause you any problems, but there's a few edge cases which you need to be aware of, which are documented, where you can have some problems. So there's two scenarios you have to consider here. First of all, there's the source code incompatibility, which means that some of the actual APIs behave differently. They give you back different results.
Right.
And then the other things is binary app compatibility, and this incompatibility, and this is things like basic changes in the behavior of the platform, which cannot be quirked. And one example of that is the garbage collector, which cleans up managed objects. We've now got a very, very efficient one. The benefit is another thing that makes our apps run faster on Windows Phone 8. We've got a great new garbage collector, but you know, this is a good example of the subtle things that can go wrong. Objects are finalized, meaning that they are tidied up, and sometimes you can have finalization code that runs when an object is finally destroyed. Very rarely used, but there are some cases. Now, if you perhaps inadvertently were expecting that finalization to happen in a certain sequence, that sequence might be changed on Windows Phone.
Right.
So these are some of the subtle things that can go wrong.
Speaking of a subtle thing, I just want to remind the audience that we do have a poll question up right now, and we'd love for you to answer it. In order to see that, you might have to drop from your full screen mode in order to see the poll, but we'd love to have your participation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And back to Andy.
Thank you. And back to the slide. Yeah.
Yes.
So this is an example of source code incompatibility. You'll need to look at the docs for this, the Windows Phone app platform compatibility. But to pick out a couple of these, for example, the XML serializer, which is a class we use for taking objects in memory and turning them into XML for storage in a file. In Windows Phone OS 7.1, in .NET Compact Framework mode, if you like, you didn't need to have a default constructor. So a constructor is one where you don't take any arguments. So you didn't need to provide one of those. Whereas if that exact same code, you try and run it when you are running in Windows Phone 8 mode, then you'll get an exception because you have to have a default constructor. So this is pretty subtle stuff. Mutex classes, names cannot include a / character on Windows Phone 8, whereas running in Quirks mode, that is allowed.
Right.
So, you know, it's hardly going to affect very many people. But if you do, when you upgrade an app to 8 and you start seeing some slightly strange behaviors like that, then have a look at this documentation, because you may be hitting one of these Quirks incident things. Okay, so binary app incompatibility. This is all about the differences in the platform. So background file transfers, for example, you know, we now have an upgraded limit. You can actually have 25 file transfers going on rather than 5. Now maybe your code assumed that you were going to get an exception when you try and queued up a 6th. So this is kind of, you know, but it's not going to happen now. So if you're looking for that, then you're going to
25 is a lot.
It is a lot. It is a lot. Access to private nested classes. So it's all pretty subtle stuff, but just to raise that for your attention.
You know, Andy, we're getting a lot of questions about WinJS coming in. And I know we kind of talked about it briefly, about how you're going to do HTML5 on our platform. But just to reiterate, on the Windows Phone platform, on Windows Phone 8, we don't have WinJS like you might have if you're doing native development for big Windows, Windows RT. And so when we talk about HTML5 and JavaScript, it's definitely in the context of that hybrid application where you have the app with a browser control to build those style of apps. And the cool thing is, as Andy showed you, those web pages can be in local storage on the device, or like other hybrid apps work, they'll pull it down from a website and work offline using app cache. That is going to be your way to do HTML5 and JavaScript apps on our new platform versus WinJS, which you can use on big Windows 8. So hopefully we can clear that up. A little distinction.
Great, thanks, Rob. Okay, so wrapping up this particular bit.
It looks like we're wrapping up.
We are done. So we're just going to take a short break now. We keep your questions coming. We'll kind of answer as many of those as we can during the break as well. So we're going to take, is it 10 minutes? 5 minutes. 5 minute break. So
10 minutes.
10-minute break.
Two hands with 5 fingers.
Yeah, so the back of the room there. These
we're going to use advanced mathematics here today, folks.
You should see all the equipment we're facing us here.
Yes.
So it's quite impressive.
It's intimidating.
Thanks for your attention so far. We'll be back. So in the next session, we're going to come back, and now we're going to run through all of the new features at a high level, kind of what's coming up in the rest of this. And then we're going to dig down into a lot of your questions about using different platforms for development. This is coming up in the next session. So hopefully we'll answer your questions there about what you can run the tools on and what you can't, and what the hardware recs are. And so we'll see you in 10. Thanks.
See you in 10.
Thank you.
We're back. I'm ready for more. Are you ready for more?
I'm certainly ready for more.
Excellent.
Look, we've had a lot of questions about virtualization, about the platforms. Well, if you can hang on for around about 20 minutes, we're going to get...
A little bit of time.
30 minutes. We're going to get right onto that topic. So I hope we will answer all those questions about running on VirtualBox and on Macs and other hardware. So we'll cover that.
It's good to know.
But the first part of this session is all about giving you a sneak preview, if you like, of pretty much everything else we're going to talk about over this next 2 days. So it's an overview of all the new features from a developer's perspective that we've got in Windows Phone 8. So this is kind of a coming up in the rest of this course.
Excellent.
So
I'm looking forward to it.
yeah, okay. So we can get to the slides. There we go.
Right.
All right.
M1B.
Yeah. There we go. So this is where we're at in the schedule. So part 2 of the opening session. So I know a lot of you guys, you really want us to get in. You don't like to see all these slides and stuff, but we will get into more code than you could imagine very soon. But this is about still setting the scene and giving you a preview of what the features are. And then the second half of this session, we're going to get into how you get started, how you get the tools, where you can install it and that kind of stuff.
Good stuff to know.
And a few demos of showing you what we've got in the tool set. And then immediately the next session and the one after that is the one I mentioned where we're going to pretty much build an app from beginning to end. So you'll get a good overview of the whole process.
I'm looking forward to that, Andy.
So am I.
Yeah.
All right, so the new features for developers in Windows Phone 8 coming up. We will be talking about the new tile template. So this is the key feature that differentiates Windows Phone from other smartphone platforms. So we've got 3 tile templates that we can take advantage of now in Windows Phone 8. There's the flip one, which is actually pretty similar to the tile template that we had in Windows Phone 7.1. So it flips from front to back. You can write content onto the front of the tile and onto the back of the tile. But we've now actually, for all of these, we've got 3 sizes supported. So we've got the middle one there is the kind of tile size that you will have been used to seeing on Windows Phone 7 devices. But we've now got a small tile size, so the user can select to shrink the tile down to a quarter size. And then we've got the double width size, so you can actually have a big tile. And all of the features you can see in these tiles are all addressable by you as a developer. We've got the iconic one, which is a clean layout designed to reflect Windows Phone design principles.
Authentically digital.
Authentically digital.
Yes.
So it takes the accent color and then just a monochrome icon that gets put on it, and you can put a count and a little bit of text on it. So nice and clean, very digital. And then the cycle one, you can cycle through up to 9 images. So we're going to be looking at how you program all of those. And these are updatable from your foreground app, from background processing, and from push notifications from the cloud. So we'll look at all of those.
Excellent.
We have got the lock screen. So the lock screen, of course, is what the user sees when they first turn on their phone. This is the lock screen that comes up when they haven't been using it for a while. And in Windows Phone 7, you would see on the lock screen just counts for the first-party apps. So we make a distinction between first-party apps and third-party apps. So first-party apps are the kind of built-in apps such as the mail client and calendar and all these kind of stuff. So it was reserved to the first-party apps in the old version. So you could see the calendar would have the bulk of the text underneath the date there, and then you have little icons for, you know, like missed calls, for new SMS messages, for new emails, that kind of thing. But now in Windows Phone 8, you can actually set your app up as a potential lock screen image data provider. So both the data at the bottom or the text underneath the date, you can provide that, or you can actually set up your app to be potentially one that could provide the image that's shown on the lock screen.
That's very cool.
The user still remains in control. They have to select your app, but you can actually, at least you can program your app to be able to feed that data. So that's the lock screen feature. There's a whole bunch of launchers. The launchers are a set of APIs that you call as a developer to perform common tasks. And what they do is they actually invoke one of the first-party applications. Typically, you'll be launching the camera, for example, to take a snapshot, or the Maps app, or you might put up a dialogue to create a contact, or create an email, or go to one of the settings to turn on Bluetooth. These are all invoked by launcher APIs. So you call one of these guys, and it brings up the first-party app. And they're called launchers because what the idea of these is that you don't have 15 slightly different ways of all doing the same thing. So,
right.
So, you can call the launcher to do it, and that's the only way you can do these kind of things. We've got a bunch of new ones now. So now we can create calendar appointments in Windows Phone 8. We couldn't do that before. You can share media on social networks, so photos and music. And then there's a whole bunch of new ones around the new maps control, of which more later.
Excellent.
In fact, of which more now. In fact,
oh,
the new maps control.
Imagine that.
Windows Phone 8 has a new maps control. So the Bing maps control from Windows Phone OS 7.1, if you've used that in your existing apps, not a problem. It's still supported. Your apps will still run. You can still program it exactly the same way. But you should consider that as deprecated. So one of the advantages of the agreement between Microsoft and Nokia was Nokia's superior mapping technology has been brought to all Windows phones, not just those supported by and provided by Nokia. It's a faster rendering map. It's vector-based. There's some nice new map modes. And we've got a session on there. We'll look deeper into how you can program that. It's a nice mapping solution. So that is provided. Kind of allied to that as well is there's a new location API, which is one of these that is shared with Windows 8. So we've got a new Windows runtime location API is on Windows Phone. So you can create portable code in that area where you've got exactly the same between what you use in Windows Phone 8 and what you've got on your Windows 8 version of your app. Again, as with all of these, the old APIs are still there. You could still carry on using those. But we've also got a new background location tracking mode. So this is continuous background location tracking. And this enables scenarios such as, if you're going out running or you're going cycling or something, you can track your route, or for turn-by-turn navigation apps. So in the past, as soon as an application like that would lose focus, it would stop
working. Yeah, stop working. Absolutely.
So now that is now enable us to keep on operating. Speech. Now, this is one of my favorite features because this is a great API. It's very, very easy to create voice commands which your users can use to actually launch your app, and they are deep linked. Now, deep link is a term you'll hear us use quite a few times, which means to not just launch an app right at its regular start page, but you can launch into a specific experience. So you can give a voice command with some context, and you can program your app to launch at a specific page, give the user the information they're looking for.
Right.
And that's one aspect of it. The other thing is, of course, text-to-speech, so you can have your app talk out text to the user, and speech reco as well. So you recognize speech, so you can have a whole structured dialogue between your application and the user. So that's pretty interesting. And it's great fun. We have fun demos for that.
I'm looking forward to that. Yeah.
Wallet. So this is one of the new first-party apps on Windows Phone 8. What it is an area where your user can store cards. And cards is kind of a loose concept, if you like. It's not just about credit and debit cards, but certainly you can store those in there. It's also about loyalty and membership cards, airline cards and loyalty things, and coupons and deals and that sort of thing. So it's an entity on the phone. It's a hub on the phone that you can interact with, your application can interact with, can update data in there. So you can create an app. Hopefully, you'll create an app for a big customer who has a customer base with a loyalty scheme or a payment card or of that kind, and you can create an app that brings that card alive so they can go into the wallet hub on the phone and look at information, their recent transactions or information or deals associated or coupons associated with that card. There's different ones, so you can actually have different cards like there, and you can actually have different deals as well. So you can.
We like deals.
Deals are cool.
Yes, we love deals.
Yeah. Now, in terms of the UI controls, so this is now XAML controls we're talking about, in what you're building your UI from. Not a lot of change, actually, from Windows Phone 7.1. So, like I said before, if you're used to using XAML to create your UI, there's not a whole, great shift of anything new you have to learn here. The big change is that this control called the long list selector has been incorporated into the SDK. Some of you will be familiar with this control because it was in something called the Silverlight Toolkit, which is this add-on extra collection of controls.
And very popular control.
Very popular control because what it does, it's kind of the Swiss Army knife of list boxes.
Certainly.
It's very much more flexible than the standard list box because you can do things like you can see on the slide here. You can actually have these jump lists. So where you've got a big list, this is kind of equivalent to the semantic zoom you get on Windows 8 if you're familiar with that on Windows 8. It allows you to navigate through a large collection of objects. So you can actually tap on the D square in the middle there and it will jump out to the kind of zoomed view on the right. So you can then zoom into a particular letter of the alphabet and dive into the middle of the collection. You can also, the graphic on the left shows where you can put footer controls and headers as well. So you can actually have a richly formatted list. But it's actually now also, the advice is the team would like you to use this for all your lists, not just so at a minimal level, you don't need all this jump list, although it obviously does all that. But even as just for a standard list, it's a drop-in replacement for the list box. There's no programming changes. You can simply change the control from a list box to a phone : long list selector. It'll work just the same.
That's good to hear.
But it's been rewritten right at its core, so you actually get better performance than you would with the list box. So that's the key change in there. Pivot and Panorama are now in ROM, which again means you're going to have greater performance.
Better performance, yeah.
Much better performance. If you were using those controls under Windows Phone 7.1, they would get compiled. They were in a kind of an external library, so they'd be included into your Zap and be shipped with every single app that use those controls. They're now in ROM, so shared across all apps on the phone. Got better performance, and also the memory overhead of the control isn't allocated to your application now, so your memory headroom is better for the memory usage of your app. And we also mentioned the web browser control in the previous one, which is now based on Internet Explorer 10. So those are the key changes. Not a lot else. The Silverlight Toolkit has been renamed to the Windows Phone Toolkit, and has a bunch of new stuff in it. We'll talk about that in a couple of hours' time.
It's always good stuff.
Yeah.
Kind of out leading ahead.
It is. It's a lot of fun stuff in there.
Yes.
3 screen resolutions. So up till now, Windows Phone 7.1 has been, we've just been in the left one there, WVGA 800 by 480. And it's a 15:9 aspect ratio.
You know, when we kind of started Windows Phone 7, 800 by 480 seemed like a pretty high resolution, didn't it? It seemed like, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Not so much anymore, huh?
No, not so much anymore. No. So yeah, WVGA. So you still got that, and it's still rich. It's a nice, good experience. But there are also now 2 higher resolution than that as well. So WXGA, which is the same aspect ratio, 15:9, but it's 1280 by 768.
Wow.
And then there's a slightly taller version of that, the 720p version, which is 1280 by 720, which is a slightly different aspect ratio of 16:9. Now, we'll talk about programming that later on, but the good news is you don't have to worry about it very much because hardware scaling takes care of a lot of the differences. So you can carry on designing UI to more or less 800 by 480. Some differences with the 720p, but we'll cover that in session 3. So in the camera and the photos, we've got a bunch of new stuff in here. There's a new get preview image method to return thumbnail images. That's pretty useful. There's now you can now create a rich media editor, photos extensibility. So that's a whole new way of integrating with the built-in Photos hub. We're not actually going to have time to cover that on this course, but read the docs if you're interested in that. There's a background photo auto upload, so you can create an application that, well, maybe you would create your own cloud repository for for photos, your
Right.
own version of Flickr or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you can actually have an app that installs onto the phone and will auto-upload any of the pictures the user takes to your cloud repository. So in the Photos hub, the user can select to automatically upload. By default, you get SkyDrive,
Right.
so that you can upload it to your Microsoft account in the cloud. But yeah, your user can choose to send it to another cloud repository if you like. There's also a bunch of advanced camera capture APIs if you want really fine control of the camera. So this has been getting better every release. Basically in 7.0, all you could do is take a snapshot.
Right.
And then we've got much more control. You can actually capture frames directly from the hardware. And now you can go right down and adjust properties such as the ISO, the balance and exposure. So you've got very, very good control of the camera. So that's an option for you if you're doing photo camera-based or picture photo.
It's a really popular,
processing.
especially with a particular new phone I can think of that has an amazing camera.
Indeed, yes, yeah, great cameras on the new phones in general, but one in particular is very good. Right, media. There's not a lot in here. Media library class, a couple of new methods to help you work with your media collection. So save song and delete methods. With pictures, there's that get thumbnail method again, so you can actually easily get a thumbnail from pictures that are in the user's camera roll. And then a couple of new args that make background audio playing a little bit easier, so just changes in that. Voice over IP is interesting. This is now being integrated right into as a first-party sort of call handler on the phone.
People are going to love that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So there was a Skype app, for example, take one example, on Windows Phone 7, which was great because you could make Skype calls out, and that was pretty good. But
Right.
you couldn't accept incoming calls unless the app was actually running, and it's actually the active application. As soon as it lost focus, your incoming call handling was lost. So that's not true on Windows Phone 8. So voice over IP apps now have a kind of a deep connection to any incoming call, so they are active, if you like, for incoming calls at any one time. And it's not just about Skype either. So these voice over IP APIs are available to anyone.
So you could add VoIP to your apps, anything you want.
You can. So yeah, like I said, it's completely integrated in as a first-class citizen on the phone. So you've got all the. It actually looks and behaves like one of the first-party apps. You don't really know the difference.
Right.
Yeah. Bluetooth and NFC. This is pretty good, especially as NFC is a feature that's not supported by all our competitors. You can actually do great stuff with Bluetooth. You can. There's a couple of scenarios we'll look at. There's Bluetooth used as an app-to-app communication channel, or app-to-device. So you can do cute stuff like run helicopters and robots and all that kind of stuff.
Love that stuff.
Yeah. The proximity API is the name of the API that is at the heart of all of this sort of thing. The kind of eye-catching feature here is that with NFC we can now read and write to NFC tags, but also you can do tap to connect, and not only between one phone and another, but also between a phone and a Windows 8 slate. So
very nice.
Those that have got NFC on them.
Excellent.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. We've got some nice demos for that. And there we go. This is the tap and share, like I said. Some Windows 8 slates, not actually the Surface. It doesn't have NFC in it. But the Samsung one that they gave out at Build, for example, and a lot of new slates coming along, have got NFC support, which does enable this tap to share scenario, which is kind of nice. Related to that as well, since we're kind of getting into networking here, is we've got the Windows Phone Runtime Windows.networking.sockets API. So we've got now, this is one of those areas where you've got a choice as a managed code developer. You can use the Microsoft.NET sockets library, or you can use the Windows Phone Runtime sockets library. The big enhancement here for both of them is that we've got listener sockets. So you couldn't actually, if you wanted to do a socket-to-socket connection between two phones, you couldn't actually do that on the Windows Phone 7 because you didn't have a listener socket.
Right.
So you kind of had to use an intermediary in the cloud or something crummy like that. But we've also got support for IP version 6. And I've mentioned this already, in the native API set, we've got WinSock support in there. Micro SDs. So you can actually now read from an SD card. You cannot write to one, but you can actually stick an SD card into those phones that support it. So it's supported by the platform. Whether that feature is going to be exposed by the phone, you have to actually look at the features. Just as an example, the Nokia Lumia 820, you can put an SD card in, but it's kind of not on the outside of the cover. You've got to take the battery out, and there's a slot in there. The Lumia 920, that's not provided to you. So it's up to the hardware manufacturers whether that feature is going to be exposed to you.
So you always need to test to see if there's something there.
Yeah.
Don't assume.
Don't assume. And when the user puts an SD card in, it's there primarily for them to extend their storage so they can put their photos and music and videos on there. But it also allows you to use it as a way of side-loading content. So you can actually put big map files or databases or big data files on, and you can stick that into the phone, and your application could read that data off there. So it's a way of side-loading additional content into an app.
Right, absolutely.
Contacts. So we've always had pretty good access to since 7.1, we've had pretty good access to the contacts collection on the phone. But there's an actually interesting new thing, this idea of custom contacts. So if you wanted to create a contact, there was a launcher for that where you could launch out to create a new contact. And then you go launch into the first-party dialog, and then you'd store that contact in your Outlook or in the cloud, in Microsoft account or that sort of thing. But now you can actually have an application, and the user would have to confirm that through the launcher and say, yep, save it. But now actually contacts can create custom contacts, which also they're stored in the hub, but they're completely private to that application. We'll talk about that when we get to it. It's kind of interesting one. You might be thinking, oh, what's that for? It's actually for apps where they've already got their own user base in the cloud, for example. So you want to be able to surface those contacts on the phone and allows them to interact with the application. This is the erroneously named app-to-app communication feature. Now, we sort of laugh about this because it does enable app-to-app communication, but that's only kind of one feature of it.
Right.
It's actually all about having an application that can register a file association. This is very close to the same story on Windows 8. So an application can say, oh yeah, I know about .andy files or something. And then if your user happens to open a .andy file, maybe from the browser, or maybe it comes as an attachment on an MMS message or that sort of thing, then it will automatically launch your app to actually handle that file. So it's a private file format. So you can do that. Similarly, there's a protocol as well. So one application can launch a protocol, and the protocol is the first bit of a URI. HTTP, of course, is a protocol. But you can actually create your own custom one, My Protocol, which is, again, your app registers for it and will launch that application. Right, in-app purchase as well. We have a good, strong story in-app purchase. This is a way that you can sell virtual products for real money. So the idea is that you upload to the Microsoft Store a bunch of in-app purchase products, which you can then sell from within your app. You can offer to your users, and they can purchase them against credit cards that you might have stored in the wallet, for example.
Right.
And Microsoft provides this commerce infrastructure to support all this, which includes methods for users to pay in 190 regions around the world. So it's a pretty rich offering. And in-app purchasing is a pretty exciting way for you to monetize your application. So we're going to dig deep into that. And there are two kinds of items that you can sell: durables and consumables. So durables is something that a user can buy and they own it forever. So that would be typically new levels in a game. They bought your app and you ship it with like just a couple of basic levels to get them started, and then you might offer additional levels as an in-app purchase.
Right.
Once they've bought it, obviously they can use that forever. Consumables is this idea of something that you use and is used up. So a bunch of tokens and this sort of thing. So once you've spent your tokens, you need to buy a whole bunch of new ones. So these two kind of in-app purchase things are supported. Enterprise app got a good story. So one of the good focuses of Windows Phone 8 is support for enterprises. First of all, enterprises can can lost a slide here. Okay, yeah, can build their apps and distribute them to internally to themselves. They can publish their own applications. So enterprise app deployment, that means that they don't have to go through the store process. Yeah,
right.
But there's still a whole security story around this, of course. So
Absolutely.
You have to get the tools, you have to be approved as an enterprise supplier, and as part of that, you get given a digital certificate that you need to use to sign your internal apps. And there's a process for enrolling your phones for doing those kind of things. So this is the process. You develop your apps, and then you get your certificate and you apply it to your devices, and then you sign your applications, and then you distribute them in some way. And there's a number of different ways of doing that. The company manages and revokes on command these applications, keep control of it. So it's an attractive way of distributing your own apps. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff. There's a good device management story coming, and things like the hardware. I haven't mentioned this. Actually supports BitLocker. Another advantage of the combined hardware platforms. We've got BitLocker on devices, which can be turned on by an internal corporate IT, enabled on corporate devices.
Right.
So the company hub is a bunch of APIs that allow you to, as an enterprise, to develop your own internal apps. And the APIs allow you to create an example here is a panorama app, for example, where you have a lot of panes of information that are reaching out to your users, and it's enterprise-specific information. That's kind of everything you're seeing there on the right. What you're seeing in the left, the frame there, is one pane on this particular panorama example, shows my apps. And this is driven by some APIs that are provided for allowing you to find out what apps, private apps, corporate apps have been installed onto your device. So in this example, we put a tile up that shows which applications you've already installed. And then underneath that Get More Apps link, that would typically take you to an intranet site where you could go and download and install some additional applications. There are other ways of installing corporate apps, email or microSD, or anyway, or indeed with highly managed devices, you can get your corporate IT can install apps on.
But what we're actually expecting is after your company has rolled out Windows Phone 8 devices to all your employees, the very first app you'll deploy will be the company hub. Yeah. And then that'll make it easy from there on to see those internal apps to get privately.
Yep.
I'm sure that's how it's going to play out.
That's indeed, yeah, that's right. We've got good support for right-to-left languages. So languages such as Arabic, Hebrew, and Persian, they're really well served now. So that's exciting. Also, these languages where the language flows from right to left so often need to incorporate some left to right content in as well, such as an example there is a network share name.
Right.
So we can actually have bidirectional content. So you can have your regular flow is right to left, and then it could stick a little bit of left to right in there, and that's handled by the flow direction property on the run element. So we've got good support for all those different scenarios. Now, the consumer store coverage. This is a pretty good story. So we've now got support for consumer store in over 180 countries. So when we launched a few years ago, we just had 29. Then with the major update last year, the Mango update, that went to 63. And now, with Windows Phone 8, that has expanded to over 180 countries.
It's a lot of countries.
It's a lot of countries. And these are all potential customers for your apps.
Right.
So
a lot of opportunity.
It's a huge market to go for, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this does actually exceed what the competition can offer. So it's a big opportunity.
Combined.
Well,
in fact.
Indeed, as it is.
Yeah.
Similar story for developers. So previously we were talking about consumers, so consumers who have phones where they go on the store app and they can choose apps to install. So that's 180 countries supported on there. It's pretty much the same countries for developers. So developers who are creating apps and submitting them into the store, you had to be in a supported country for that to happen. Now, when we started, there was 38 countries were supported with Windows Phone 7.x. And now that has expanded to over 180 countries. So it's a good story. If you're not in one of those 180 plus countries, there's still other, Microsoft has some global publishing partners who can help you and submit your apps on your behalf to the store and handle that submission process for you. languages as well. So this is the language support of the operating system, the phone, which languages, how the phone interacts with the end users. So we had 24 supported previously, and with Windows Phone 8, that now goes up to 50 different languages on the phone, including, much to my surprise, I didn't realize this, actually English UK is one of the new languages. Yeah.
That's a huge addition.
So I hope that means we can have speech things while we're going for a nice cup of tea or something.
Yes, proper English.
Proper English.
For a change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, from a developer's point of view, this is exciting because if you're going to use, these are all opportunities for you to sort of localize your apps or do speech and sort of thing. You could actually localize your app into one of the less well-served languages, and you could be #1 in Lithuania or somewhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not a bad idea.
Indeed. So. So that's not on the list. I chose one that wasn't on the list.
You just had, yeah, it's on there.
How about, oh, okay.
We were already on there.
Yeah, so one of those languages. So you've got great support for reaching out. If you want to localize your application into different languages.
And we make it really easy this time around for localization, don't we?
Yeah, I'm going to cover that in the session after next. And last but definitely not least, Windows Phone 8 apps run faster.
We feel the need for speed, don't we, Andy?
We do. And this is not just about the fact that we've got great new multi-core hardware and running at faster processor rates.
Right.
It's actually because now when a user downloads an app from the store, installs it onto their Windows 8 phone 8 device, as part of that process, it's compiled to native code in the cloud. So previously, you'd download the app to the device and it would be JITted, just in time compiled when you ran it. Now that JITting is done for you up in the cloud. So what you're getting is native code ready to go. So it's super fast. And this is one reason why when we're talking about the hybrid native apps and you don't necessarily get the super speed increase that you might expect from incorporating native code into a managed app, because your managed app is running natively
fast
anyway.
Now. Yeah.
And the most obvious manifestation of this is that on Windows Phone 8 devices, you don't often see a splash screen anymore. Because that was the time before where the JIT compiler would be compiling your code and getting it all ready to run the app, and there would be a bit of a pause while that went on. You hardly see a splash screen anymore because it's so fast. So this is really good, and it's one of those hidden benefits of Windows Phone 8 devices.
And it's a benefit for our customers.
Absolutely.
You know, user experience is a broad umbrella.
Yeah. And everybody who's had a Windows Phone 8 device has remarked on the speed of these things. So it's a good story.
Definitely. Even the old apps.
Even the old apps, yeah. That's right. You don't have to upgrade your Windows Phone 7.x devices to 8 to get that performance advantage.
Right. The 120,000 apps for Phone 7 all get compiled in the cloud as well.
Yeah.
So it's good stuff.
Just before we pass on to Rob to talk about the developer getting started and that sort of thing, just again, keep your questions coming. One particular question we've had is like, does the speech support other languages such as Spanish? Absolutely, it does.
Yeah.
So we got good support for different languages in speech, and we'll be tackling that when we look at the speech tomorrow.
Oops, definitely.
Yep.
All right. Let's dive into how we're going to get started developing for Phone 8. I know you want to know what steps do you need to take to accomplish that. So obviously step one is you've got to get the tools. And so we have this Developer Phone Center. In the past, you've been to our App Hub. You typed in create.msdn.com. You can still type that in now, and I think it'll redirect you. You have your choice to get there. But the new site is dev.windowsphone.com. And you get the SDK to download, and it's free. This is the great part of it. I mean, we're adding so much value to our developer community out there. If you don't own anything at all, you just download the tools. They're free. You can get running and start making apps. And then we just give you a wealth of content, information on articles and the forums and information to help you learn whether it's new stuff for Phone 8 or if you're a beginner and you've never done development before. We have a lot of great articles to get you started there, to get you going. And so when you go to the Developer Center, this is what you would expect. This is what it looks like today. Nice and colorful. You kind of get a view of some of the live tiles for some of the apps, and you can see where you can get the SDK and things like that, and submit your apps. So let's talk really quick, though, about PC requirements in order for you to develop apps. So currently, in order to build a Windows Phone 8 app, you need to be running Windows 8 on a 64-bit version of Windows 8 on your machine, on your PC, on your laptop, your desktop. And then you need, we talk about you can see here the hardware specs, the 8 gig of free space, and the 4 gig of RAM to run all that memory. And then the other critical thing to talk about here is the emulator. If you're running on a device, you can always plug in the device and do what you want. But for our emulator, which we're running inside Hyper-V, not only do you have to be running on Windows 8 Pro or higher, but you have to be using something called second level address translation. It's part of the chipset in there. And so let's take a look at that SLAT thing, because you're probably wondering, what is SLAT? It's just a requirement. It has to do with some of the hardware acceleration and things like that to enhance the performance of a virtualized image in Hyper-V. If you have a machine, a computer, a PC, that's running one of the Core i processors like the i3, i5, i7, those kind of things, what would you say in the last couple of years or so?
Yeah, this SLAT thing, it has had a lot of coverage, but pretty much if you've bought a professional standard PC over the at least last year or so, it's going to have a Core i processor of some kind. You will have the necessary support for SLAT. And AMD has an equivalent in their higher end processors as well.
That's good to know.
Yeah, but it does mean this is a slight difference from what you may have used if you're coming from a Windows Phone 7 development environment. So unfortunately, this requirement is there. It's there to support this great emulator, which is a step up from what we had before.
Right.
But it does need, because it's built on top of Hyper-V, this is where this requirement comes from. The other thing about Hyper-V as well, let's say about that. So let's just stress this point because there's a lot of confusion. Hyper-V client is needed to run the emulator. So if you want to run the emulator, you need Windows 8 Pro or Windows 8 Enterprise. If you don't want to run the emulator, if you have a real device you can test on, which is just as easy, to be honest, as working with the emulator, then you don't need the Pro or higher. You can go for a lower edition of Windows 8. And also it does mean that you can run the Windows 8 SDK and do application development on itself on a virtualized box. So, but you won't be able to run the emulator because Hyper-V emulator, you can't run Hyper-V on a virtualized platform.
Right. Virtualization within virtualization
doesn't sit well.
Not good performance there. Yeah. Anyway, you can see here some tools, some of our famous sysinternals tools that you can download from TechNet. Here's kind of a view of kind of what the command line might look like, so that you can do a quick check. If you're not certain. And you want to check in advance, you can download this and run this command line, and you can real quickly tell if your PC supports that. So once you've got that taken care of, the next thing you're going to want to do is you need to get that developer account to get going. So you know where to go, the website, and you got to have that developer account because you may want to unlock your phone so that you can develop, so you can tether it to your PC to do debugging and test it on your phone. And so that's part of it. And so if you already have an MSDN subscription, then you're already good to go. If you are a part of the DreamSpark program, you're in good shape. And then if you're an individual developer and you're not a part of either of those two programs, it's going to be a $99 charge each year to be part of the program. And again, like I said before, you go to dev.windowsphone.com. All right, so let's take a quick look at the development tools that you'll be using to get going with all this.
The first thing to say, of course, is the DevTools is free.
Yes.
So you download the SDK completely free.
Free is good.
Free is great.
Yeah, free is good, So the first thing, you're probably wondering, why are we looking at Zune here? Yes, because clearly, isn't that right, Andy? If you're doing a Phone 8 development and you're either tethering to a Phone 8 device, you don't need the Zune software.
No, that's correct. So you always needed Zune. In fact, when you used to plug in a Windows Phone 7.1 device, you plug that into a laptop, it would prompt you to download and install Zune, because Zune was the conduit for syncing your music and everything, and it was also the conduit for you from Visual Studio to connect to that device if you wanted to actually test and develop your apps on a real device.
So the cool thing is about in Visual Studio 2012 and doing development with our new tools, we're not throwing you under the bus when it comes to developing for 7.1 devices, and so we fully support that. It's just you'll need Zune if you still want to target and tether and run against 7.1 devices. And so that's what it's for. If you're not going to be using 7.1 anymore, then it won't be required. And as we say here, you'll just have that, it'll just automatically work with a USB connection for Phone 8 devices. We kind of mentioned earlier, you want to register to unlock your phone to make it a developer device. And so you can unlock up to 3 devices and have them registered. And it's a real simple process once you've plugged it in and you go get your email and you type in your login credentials, your Windows account.
Yep.
And that device unlocks, and you can start debugging against it.
Yeah. So just to stress this, you need to have signed up for a developer account for this, and this allows you to unlock your up to 3 devices as an individual.
All right. And when you have done that, and you want to actually deploy to your phone, here, just like we've had in the past, you have your drop down to target where you want to deploy to or where you want to debug. So your target device, whether that's an actual device or an emulator. And so applications are on the phone. Once you deploy an application onto a developer unlocked phone, it's installed alongside other apps that you install on the phone through normal channels or as well as the marketplace. You can also send your ZAP file that you've created, the app, to other developers. Yeah, for them to install.
But the key thing here is that as you're developing and you're installing your Hello Worlds onto your device, when you get to your 11th Hello World variant,
ding,
yeah, you'll get an error because it just limits the number of unsigned apps that you can install onto the device at any one time. So you just have to uninstall Hello World version 1, and then you can carry on with Hello World version 11. So
excellent.
Yeah,
good. It might be that.
Could be the one you've been looking for, the one that's going to make you a fortune.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or when you do that Rube Goldberg Hello World, and you try to see how complicated you can make it to tell you Hello World, maybe it takes to the 11th app to get it right.
I think it would.
To have the level of complexity.
It would.
Yes. All right, debugging. We have a great debugging experience. And whether you're targeting the emulator or the phone, easy to set breakpoints, to step through your code, to check the variables, the tooltips that we have. Makes it real easy to identify what's going on in your code at any given time. Andy talked earlier about this whole optimized image and JIT compiling in the cloud and things like that. Well, it looks like we can do something kind of like that here on the Visual Studio itself if you want to try it out. So rather than debugging, rather than just hitting F5 or hitting the device, you can do Control F5 to start without debugging, or Alt F1 to fire up the phone performance analysis tool, and you can test the performance of your app as a native image versus a JIT compiled, and so you can get a better sense of what the end user will expect.
Yeah, the pre-jitting tools are actually shipped with the SDK, so this is what Visual Studio is running at this time.
Right.
Enterprises can do their own pre-jitting using the tools that are in the SDK if they're doing their own enterprise app distribution.
Absolutely, because the enterprise may not have their apps go through our cloud process or our store or anything.
Yeah,
absolutely. So the phone emulator, as Andy mentioned earlier, our emulator runs inside Hyper-V, which is why you need Windows 8, because that's how we support Hyper-V as a client. But it really is the real phone image, just like on a real device. And so you get that emulator with the SDK, and it comes with a lot of extra tools to do some extra simulations. A lot of times you think of an emulator as kind of the dumbed down, I can just do some basic things, but I need the real phone to test out location or accelerometer, things like that. And that's definitely not true with our tools. It's kind of an advantage of using our technology versus some of our competitors, which just kind of give you a basic emulator. And so you get a great simulation dashboard to test out a lot of real-world situations. So that being said, the emulator, especially when we talk about things like performance, is not always going to be your best, most reliable way to predict how things are going to run. It'll test functionality in every way possible, but definitely encourage you to always test against real devices before you deploy, just to get a sense, of how things, because you don't want any surprises. Functional test is very different from end-to-end, that user experience and performance. Deploying to the emulator, you just choose which emulator, and Andy earlier went through with all the different screen sizes we have, resolutions.
Yeah. So as you can see, we've got 4 flavors of emulator that's included in the SDK. There's the 512 meg, which is now the low spec machine.
Yeah.
WVGA. There's the full WVGA, which is the 1 gig memory. WXGA and 720p. So you can test against it on all those different screen resolutions.
You know, when you see that, and you kind of go back to a requirement of a 64-bit Windows 8 machine, it kind of makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's not like we're trying to make it more difficult for you to develop. It's common sense. The emulators are going to use so much memory. If you have a 1 gig emulator and the tools running and everything else you have going, you need that extra headroom that you get from a 64-bit address space. So that's the key thing to take away there. The emulator interface, you know, you can interact with it with a keyboard and a mouse. If you have a touch screen, if you have one of these awesome new PCs, you know, devices that they're flooding the market right now with Windows 8 that has the multi-touch, you can use that right on the screen with your fingers and have that same experience.
Works great on the emulator. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then if you need to use the keyboard to type into it, you might notice if you just kind of do it by default, it doesn't respond. And so you reach down and use your page up and page down keys to give you that, oh yes, I'm going to type into the URL, for instance, in the Internet Explorer, things like that. And so that's how you'll switch back and forth if you're doing text with the keyboard. Orientation. We make it easy to flip, you know, go from portrait to landscape and to see how your device will look and behave.
Oh, look, robmiles.com.
See, Rob Miles, he's here.
He's here.
He is here.
He's here.
Right now.
Yeah.
I'm channeling him right now, actually. Camera emulation. So when you're in the emulator, it's just going to take a simple photograph, you know, or a pseudo photograph or something like that. But then you can pull it in and use it for your testing. But I think your best testing, especially if you're, you know, Andy earlier talked about the lenses and all the incredible things you can do and getting into that pipeline. You know, you'll definitely want to go to the next level and use one of these great new devices to see how things are going to work with the best camera emulation. And
So, a quick demo.
A quick demo.
Yeah.
Yes. Photo snap.
Yeah. So if we go on the demo machine.
Yes.
Here we go.
Back over there.
So this is about as simple an app as you can get. It's just to show off the camera emulation. So there we go. Main page, camera capture task. Ignore the photo chooser task, and a photo button. Click, and then a camera task completed. This piece of genius looks like this, and the app is starting up. And here we go. There we go. And we can take a picture. So this is now launching. This is one of those launchers. It's launched into the camera emulation on the emulator. You can see you get this very nice, attractive, colored square goes around the periphery.
Is that like the original Windows NT 3.1 screensaver? It kind of bounced around.
Yeah. And then when you want to take a photo, just click anywhere, tap anywhere on the screen, and there it goes.
Ah.
It's really good.
That's lovely.
That's a lovely picture.
Yeah.
And accept, and it just captures the square somewhere. So you can take another one. There we go. Capture that one. There we go. Accept that one. And then it also stores these away. You can go off and have a look in the camera roll and go and pick one of your pictures out of the camera roll and show that on the screen. So, yeah, nice and simple, but that's the camera emulation in the emulator.
Yes. So great functional testing.
Yep.
Yes, it does it. It works. It's not beautiful. If you want to have the picture of the Bellagio and some of those other things, you want to use your real device. All right, so let's move ahead about location emulation. And I kind of mentioned earlier, there's, you know, our emulator is not just a place to see if it runs or not. You know, we actually allow real-world external environment type, you know, inputs come into the device, even if it's on an emulator. And we do that through, we have these extra tools, that we can launch out. And so you kind of see here, if you look down there at the bottom, the two little arrows heading to the right, is where you're going to do to launch some of these additional tools. So the first one you can see here, when you pull that up, is a location emulator. And as it were, it's focused on us here in Seattle and Redmond, you know. Mm-hmm. And the great thing here is this is a great way to test, you know. Sometimes it's hard to test a location-based app if it's just you and you're just kind of walking around with it, right?
Tell us about it. I did in Windows Phone 7.0, I did a location app. And it kind of gets a bit tedious walking around with a laptop under one arm. And
it is tedious.
Yeah.
You probably look silly walking around in an open field with a laptop and a phone.
Yeah.
What is that guy?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. A good thing you weren't doing a conversation with it or anything like that. You might look really silly. Yeah. Anyway, so location tools. This is how you're going to simulate. You can do push pins. You can move things around, and it's going to feed those coordinates right into the device. And so you'll really simulate that real world thing. And you know, not to jump over to the web, but the same geolocation thing that you can test with this tool for your native your apps that you're building in XAML and C# and VB, it also works with the mobile web, because one of the things we support is the geolocation from the W3C working group for that. So it's a great tool whether you're doing, you know, native or web. But you know, nothing's complete without a quick demo.
A quick demo. You're going to have a quick demo. Yeah.
How about a quick demo?
Oh, okay. Just so happen to have a location tracker app here.
Get out of town.
Yeah. This is the default track location. So we've got it's a pivot with 2 panes on it. We've got a map. Oh, there's a map. We can start tracking our position. You see the little icons come at the top there, a little circle. It's now resolving. This thing it sticks the latitude and longitude on this pane, and it actually covers us in the map on here.
And who knows where that is right now?
Well, actually, I was playing with this earlier, and actually, we're currently somewhere in the Moray Firth, just near to Edinburgh, as it happens. This is where we're in the sea. But I thought maybe you'd like to see where I live. So this is actually Llanfairpwllgwyngyllgogerychwr.
Are you sure you want to do this?
No, maybe not. Actually.
All your fans might come outside, you know.
Yeah, so there you go. It's in North Wales, beautiful North Wales on the edge of Snowdonia.
No, I think we should zoom in until we can see your house.
Yeah, do you want to? Okay. No, maybe we don't. Okay, moving on. Moving on. Anyway, the code for this is this is the example of. We'll talk about this tomorrow in the location, but we have a geolocator object here, and you set your position changed, and then once you start that, you'll get position changed events will fire, which is down here. And then you can set the latitude and longitude to the lat long you're getting, and then we're sticking push pins onto our map control. We'll dig down into the actual logic of that tomorrow, but
certainly
it's not a lot of code to do something really pretty visually pleasing and sophisticated. So it's nice.
Excellent.
Yeah,
that's what people want. Visually pleasing.
Oh, one thing actually I want to just touch on before.
Just touch.
If we can go back to the demo machine. Here I'm going to get rid of this pane here, the thing. And actually I'm going to close the app. This is one big change from you if you're existing Windows Phone 7 application developer. So Visual Studio at the moment, you can see in the background it says Location Tracker is running. If I close the app, under Windows Phone 7.1, that would have closed the debug session on Visual Studio.
That's true.
Doesn't happen under Windows Phone 8. And the reason for that is all these great new features we've got in Windows Phone 8 are ways of launching your app. There's a lot, the app-to-app communication and the tiles and speech, all these kind of new ways of launching your app. And you need to be able to debug these situations. So now when you close the foreground app on the emulator or on the device, the debug session carries on going. So you have to go in and actually go into Visual Studio and stop the debug session, stop debugging in order to close down Visual Studio. So that's a change from your experience as a developer with Phone 7.
Absolutely. All right, let's take a look at the lock screen in the emulator. The lock screen is a good thing to be able to, one of those things, common occurrences that happen with applications, and you need to be able to simulate that in the emulator as well to see what's happening with your app when the lock screen comes up. And so F12 from the keyboard if you want to do it, but we also have this great simulation dashboard just from the tools menu, and you can open the dashboard and simulate that behavior that you're going to get when your app's running under the lock screen. The other thing you can do is network simulation.
This is cool.
This is cool.
Yeah.
You know, Andy and I are real networking kind of guys, in addition to database guys.
Yeah.
And so we're big believers in, you can't make assumptions. Too many people we've been building mobile apps forever. And one of the things that's been a big thing with us is people would build apps on a desktop connected to gigabit Ethernet, assume that you're in this perfect utopia world, and that's just not reality of how things are out in the real world. Network conditions are changing all the time.
Try living in Snowdonia, North Wales. Yeah.
Snowdonia, yeah, that almost sounds like a place out of a Disney movie, doesn't it? Yeah.
Actually, I forget, one of those gothic horror movie, science fiction things was filmed near us recently.
It almost sounds like a made-up word.
Clash of the Titans.
Clash of the Titans. Did they release the Kraken on Snowdonia?
They did. Yes.
Wow.
We're still recovering from the experience.
I'm sure you are. I'm sure you are.
Yeah.
So, had you tested the networks, there, because sometimes you've got 3G. Everybody thinks, I'm going to have this great LTE everywhere. But all you have to do is ride on the TGV at 324 kilometers per hour and notice that you have a spotty GPRS.
Oh, that's amazing.
And so much of the real world is more like GPRS. So anyway, I can't stress enough how important it is for you to test network simulations, the strength of the signal and the speed of the signal to get, because remember, UX is not UI. UX is the all-encompassing thing. When someone pushes a button and it has to go reach out and get information from a web service, that network conditions are part of it. So not the la-la land that you were in when you developed it on your gigabit Ethernet PC, but the reality. Remember, there's you and about 1,500 of your best friends hitting the nearest cell tower, and then it's got to go down to the base station, and it's got to jump on the backhaul network and get on the interwebs, and then get to the actual site that you want to go through a DMZ and firewalls, and then queue up on the web service server, and then come back and do that whole thing all the way back again. All of this plays a role in good UX, and network simulation is a critical element. So I can't stress enough how important this is. Not to be outdone, though. Okay, capturing screenshots, another critical thing. People are always asking, how do I do screenshots? So we make it super simple to do that. We have a screenshot tab in these extra tools on your emulator, and you can use that because you're going to need to have some pictures in the market, in the store, to show off the different elements, which helps you sell. The more screenshots you have of different pages in your application, the better. People get a better sense of what your app looks like and does, and they'd be more likely to want to purchase your app. And then on the real device, not to be outdone by the emulator's extra special tools, you can do it on a real device. And so if you just hold the power button and the Windows button down at the exact same time, voila, you get a screenshot. It's saved as like a PNG or something like that. And then you can share it, or you can use it for your own purposes. You could overshare as well on social networks, like Andy is so apt to do. So, to wrap up here, I know we're running way over. But obviously we have a lot of great new features in the Phone 8. That shared core, that NT kernel running on ARM, on the device, it's amazing, and it's so fast. And it's not just fast because of the hardware. It's fast because the operating system is so optimized. It's great engineering by our product group, just great engineering. The XAML plus manage, the XNA manage, we have so much flexibility. Direct3D games, having the C++ exposed with the Direct3D, and the support for lots of the different frameworks that other gaming companies use, means we're going to have great games, console-style games that you may not have seen before on Windows Phone 7 coming to our platform. They're already arriving, actually, which is just going to make it a more compelling platform for everyone. And then a great takeaway. All those 130, 120,000 apps that are already up there now for Phone 7, they are going to work unchanged, except for the quirky things, the edge cases that Andy talked about. And they're going to run on Phone 8, and they're not just going to run, they're going to run fast because we're going to compile them in the cloud. And so you're going to have that native speed, productivity of .NET, rapid development, with speed of C++ on the platform. It's going to be great stuff. I'm excited about it. What are you? Are you excited?
I'm very excited.
I can feel the excitement. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Well, we're going to break. I have one very important question I have to answer from the list. Somebody's asking, how do I get the shirt that Andy is wearing? Bribery always works. That's
Bribery.
Right.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You could go to the fictitious town that he lives in Wales.
On a serious note, somebody's saying, I wish the developer account was free until you are ready to submit your first app for certification. Well, actually, you can. Effectively, it is free because you can download the SDK for free. As long as you've got hardware to run the emulator, you can develop your app completely up to the point where you're ready to certify, ready to submit, and only then would you actually be forced to pay up for a developer account.
And you know what? Don't sell that short. If not to go back into the mists of time, but when I got started in the mobile business with Pocket PC, when that first iPad came out, I didn't own anything. You couldn't even get the device. But the MSDN had the tools to download this thing called Embedded Visual Basic and an emulator, and I started building apps right away. And then I wrote a book, and the rest is history. So it's huge. All this free stuff. The emulator does a great job, and so it's important work for you to get after.
So I've also been asked, can Andy stand up and show the shirt? Well, here you go, guys. There you go. Thank you. Thank you so much.
That's beautiful.
All right,
Wow.
So we're going to break.
We're going to take a break.
We're going to take 10, and then we're going to come back and dig deep into creating an application.
Digging, like
Yeah.
Minecraft.
Yep.
Yeah. All right.